welcome you to another live edition of the Sports Box, your go-to sports podcast featuring great content, conversation, and your occasional disagreement. Stick around to interact and ask questions. The Sports Box is brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports, located on the White Horse Pike in Hamilton, New Jersey. Showcase Sports for the elite player. Ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back once again with another episode of the Sweet Tea Show here on the Sports Box Network, covering college football. As always, I am your host, Noah Dog Dive. We're joined by my co-host and good buddy, Garth Charger Patrick, representing his Florida Gators, coming off a remarkable win against McNeese State that has now propelled Florida into the college football playoff conversation, at least according to Gators fans. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
Oh, I'm fired up, man. Big win last week. Finally looked like a complete football team for once. Big matchup this weekend with a heated rival coming to town. We'll get more into that, obviously, when we get to that game, but obviously really, really fired up. College football has been absolutely insane so far. Both on and off the field, Noah. A lot of good things happening on the field. A lot of crazy, wild things going on off the field. Trash talking, scandals. It's just nuts, man. It's been a crazy year so far.
Yeah, we're going to get into some scandals. I tell you, man, it never fails. You know, the week or the day of the show, something crazy happens that just makes no fucking sense at all. But, yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. Got a couple comments coming in. Obviously, going to start off the show with the good old Ric Flair. Woo! We're fired up, man. We got a lot to talk about as well. Like, this was most college football weeks have some craziness. This was wild. I mean, Alabama going down, A&M getting routed in the second half by Miami. The Ole Miss game, multiple teams having to survive. UNC almost lost to App State. They had to win in overtime. Wisconsin goes down to Washington State. I mean, just a lot of crazy shit was going on. Andrew says, the Aquaman show dropped. Let's fucking go. Andrew's a big nerd. His Hawaii Warriors did finally win. Granted, it was against University of Albany. But, I mean, take what you can get, I guess, after you lose to a team like Stanford. But anyway, we're going to get right into it. And before we get too far into it, if you have not yet, please make sure to leave a like on the show. Help share the show through Facebook's algorithm. But we're going to get right into it. We're going to start with the breaking news controversy of the week because apparently this college football season just loves to have all the controversy. We had the Pat Fitzgerald news to start the season. And now we got this, Garth, which is it's a serious matter, but it's written in such a way that it's also kind of amusing. So, Mel Tucker, head coach of Michigan State Spartans, has been accused of masturbating during phone sex. Sexual harassment case with a woman named Brenda Tracy, who is I believe she's a rape survivor. She's also an anti-sexual violence advocate. Mel Tucker claims that the phone sex where he masturbated was consensual. So he's kind of, down Schitt's Creek without a paddle here. Harlon Barnett takes over as interim head coach. I got to say this, Garth, man. Mel Tucker, great job in 2021. Really liked what he did with them. But as we see, what happened with Michigan State last year, and now this bullshit, I think we have to start to consider how much that was just the fact they had Kenneth Walker, and that dude was like a top 3 running back in college football that year. Now, look, I know Mel Tucker. I know him a long time. He was former DC at UGA. Didn't really have a strong opinion for or against him at that time because, honestly, I think Kirby Smart did most of the running of the defense and still does, at least, to a certain degree. Obviously, it helped when he had Dan Lanning, but for the most part, I mean, we all know Kirby's defensive background. Mel Tucker, I mean, there's not much to say about this. I think he's an absolute idiot, man. Like, I mean, how do I put this, Garth? Like, there's websites out there. If you have fetishes like this, like go on Pornhub, look up some hentai, whatever you're into. It doesn't matter. Why are you doing this with someone who can literally snitch on you, potentially get you fired, but at the least suspended for a bit? I mean, I don't know what he was thinking. What were your thoughts when you started reading about this?
Yeah, so obviously, once this broke, I started to read up on it, and the first thing that jumped out to me is the type of person that he did it to.
Mm-hmm.
This is a woman that they brought in purposely to speak to the team, the younger guys on the football team, and kind of teach them the importance of not doing stuff like this, not getting themselves in trouble, ruining
Yes.
careers, what be it over stuff like this. Obviously, it's not a good thing to do in general, Noah, regardless of who the person is, what their title is, what they do for work, whatever. But like of all the people in the world, this man decides to go and do something like this with somebody who is literally an advocate for it, goes all around the country speaking it, like somebody that you would take very, very seriously and think is a very credible source in regards to something like this. Just a total lack of judgment and common sense, and honestly, kind of a Shaun of the Week moment by Mel Tucker here, quite frankly.
Do you think he's going to get fired, or do you think he might get out of this?
I don't know. I don't think that his career is over in coaching because of the fact that it's more so like sexual harassment, whereas he, if it was something where like he forced himself onto her, raped her, any of that kind of thing,
Right.
obviously he would be done. But because it's kind of just from what we've seen so far anyways, it just seems like it was a over the phone sexual harassment thing. So I don't think that his coaching career is necessarily over if he wants to continue pursuing it. I don't think Michigan State's going to be able to bring him back if they find that this really did happen, though. I feel like in today's day and age, so many teams are concerned about their personal image on a national front more so than like wanting to sweep something under the rug or pretend something didn't happen just to keep a coach. So I think he's probably done at Michigan State unless they end up determining that it was like a complete hoax and just made up for, the media's sake and all that.
Yeah, I don't think it's the end of his coaching career, like you said, because, like you said, he didn't rape anyone, he didn't sexually assault or grope someone. It's sexual harassment. Look, I know it's funny to say, oh, masturbating during phone sex, blah, blah, blah. And maybe it was consensual. Maybe he's telling the truth about that. We don't know just yet. But like, what are you doing, dude? Like, why would you do this publicly? Like I said, whether you think this is filthy or not, like there are ways you can do stuff like this in a private manner, and definitely don't do, like you said, Garth, don't do this to someone who's literally an anti-sexual violence advocate, because they're going to report you because they think you're a fucking creep. And to be honest, you kind of are. Like, why are you doing this, Mel Tucker? Like, come on, man. Like, be smarter. Like, you're the head coach of a a Big Ten program, and no slouch of a program at all. Okay, they haven't been good. They weren't good last year, but like, I mean, I honestly think he just threw away, and he had that big extension as well. And I was reading it, if they can, find a way to terminate his contract without having to pay his buyout or whatever.
Yeah, that's correct. So that's another thing, Noah, that probably reinforces my opinion that he's probably at least done at Michigan State, because I remember reading something where his contract is specifically worded that if he has any kind of actions or statements that kind of, I forget exactly how it was worded, but basically if he goes and does anything that reflects poorly on the university, puts the university's kind of reputation at stake, they're literally able to fire him and void the contract so that they don't even have to pay the buyout.
Garth, like, I'm just saying, man, like, if someone offered me or you a $100 million contract, like, we're acting like Tim Tebow. Like, we're not doing anything wrong, man. We're going to church every Sunday. We're donating, millions of dollars every year. We're not doing something stupid like this. Like, come on, Mel. Come on, man. Tom Scavetta coming in saying Sam Hartman for Heisman consideration. I agree. 4 touchdown passes this week against NC State. Very impressive. We'll get in that game in a little bit. Mikey Mouse Bradley saying dorks.
King
What's up, Mike?
Dorcas himself. What is good?
Blair Kelly saying, man, you guys are doing a show right now. The best NFC team in the league, the Philadelphia Eagles, are playing right now. Hey, man, we can multitask. We can keep up with the game and do a show. That's just how, elite we are at this point. But yeah, I do think the Vikings are probably going to get killed. I mean, they lost to the Bucs in week 1. Like, the Bucs are terrible, man. How do you lose to a team with Baker Mayfield at quarterback? I don't even know how that's possible.
Last I knew, they're down a few starters as well.
Yeah. Sweet tea is better than the Philadelphia Eagles. I agree. And I don't even have anything against the Eagles. They're basically Georgia's second team at this point because they like drafting all their defensive players. But, yeah, let's get into some games now, Garth. We've got a lot to discuss. We'll start with this game. I'm going to be honest. I thought this game would be closer than it was. Colorado's flying high. Nebraska coming off a devastating loss, but their defense actually looked good against Minnesota. It did not look good against Colorado because Shedeur Sanders had another great game. Xavier Weaver, they had the 4 100-yard receivers in week 1, and then Xavier Weaver comes out. He has his big game as well. But I got to say, credit to Colorado. They look really good. But my God, this Nebraska offense is one of the worst things I've ever seen. Like, it's like they're doing their best Iowa Spencer Petras or impression or something like that. It's so bad. I mean, Jeff Sims just looks clueless out there. I mean, it's not his fault. Clearly, he was thrown into a terrible situation after Scott Frost decided to gut that team for several years in a row with his very terrible coaching. But, I mean, they should have won week 1. They completely blew that game to Minnesota. And now they just get killed. And, look, I will say this. Deion Sanders is doing a great job, man. He's making people rethink. If I'm Dabo Swinney and I'm looking at this and this guy brought 55 transfers in, I'm thinking, maybe I should have done more than just brought a 1 3-star transfer quarterback in for my entire transfer portal because I got steamrolled by 21 points against the Duke Blue Devils. And not in basketball either, in football. But overall, I think very impressive for Colorado. Matt Rule is going to be in for a rude awakening at Nebraska. This is going to be a long project to rebuild this Nebraska program. But I will say this. I think Colorado looks great, and I think they're absolutely going to steamroll Colorado State this week. I know it's a rivalry game, but, I mean, Jay Norvell just made I don't know why he's trying to fire up Deion and the rest of that team even more than they already are, but I do think they can win that game convincingly. But let's pump the brakes a little bit. I'm not going to say they're a college football playoff contender just yet. I think we need to get a little further in the season, see what they can do against the Pac-12 schedule. There's some good teams at the top of the Pac-12. That said, they did struggle this week, Utah and Oregon. But overall, I want to see what they can do in conference play. But, yeah, good start this season for them, Garth. What were your takeaways from this game?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, Noah, with the Iowa and Spencer Petras impersonation because, honestly, this Nebraska defense is pretty solid. The issue is when your offense physically cannot do anything for you and you're on the field, 90% of the game, you're going to get gassed. You're going to get tired out. You can only go so long playing really, really good football when you're on the field constantly. And quite frankly, I think that's what you saw happen in this one because early on it was – They still weren't doing anything offensively, but their defense was kind of slowing things down for Colorado, making life a little bit more difficult. It was kind of in the second half where Colorado pulled away as you saw that defense get tired out. And one other thing that you mentioned there, Noah, the transfer portal and Dabo, I think we're really seeing like just how good of a tool this can be in college football. Really, the first person to do it is a guy that we just mentioned not too long ago, Mel Tucker, that first year at Michigan State. He brought in a boatload of transfers, obviously Kenneth Walker, but a lot of other guys that were key contributors. He actually took, I think, 2 guys from Florida Gators. He got a handful of SEC guys across the board. They had a really, really good year. Then you look at Lincoln Riley at USC. He brought in a boatload of transfers when he left Oklahoma. And now you're seeing Deion do it at Colorado. So I think it's not a good recipe long-term for success. Like you can't go into every single season going, all right, we're just going to completely reload through the transfer portal because one, the guys could not pan out coming over from another system. You might not get as many guys or like as many great players as you were expecting. I still think that you need to be recruiting well and then also bolstering it with the transfer portal. But at least for like one and done seasons where you can go on a run and surprise a lot of people, it's definitely, a thing now in college football. And like you said, I like Colorado. They're the feel good story. They're drawing all the buzz in college football right now with Dion. Huge fan of him and what he's done so far. But I wouldn't quite, jump off the ship and go, yep, college football playoff team. We got to see how they fare in some of these tougher games because I think for me, where I'm at with them right now is that they're probably going to have a pretty solid year, like a really respectable year. Obviously, anything that more than one win is better because that's all they had last season. But, a good like 8, maybe 9 wins, depending on if they can win some of those toss-ups. I don't think they're quite to the point where they can win the Pac-12 yet or make CFP, but they still should have a pretty solid year, I feel.
Andrew says, nope, not completely sold. I agree. Jacob says Ohio. Yeah. Hey, man, I'll tell you what. Ohio State struggles in the first half against Indiana week 1. All of a sudden, they beat up on Youngstown State, and they're talking about how they're back and they're going to win the national title and all that. We'll see what happens, man. We're only 2 weeks in. It's still too early to.
They're still trying to figure out their quarterback situation, too.
Yep. I do think Kyle McCord will probably be the guy, but we'll see what happens there. Did y'all hear the carne asada is back at Chipotle? I did not, but that's good to know. I'll judge the Buffs in the back-to-back games of USC and Oregon. I agree.
That'd be a good measuring stick.
I don't know if Colorado competed with the top teams. 8 or 9 wins is very generous. Well, look, 8 or 9. If they win 7 or 8 games, Andrew, if they won 1 game last year, I mean, that'd be great for them. And Dion, I mean, he's building something special there. I will say he's got some really good players in there. Like I said, do I think they're going to compete for a CFP or anything crazy like that in year 1? No, but I mean, we'll see what they can do in the Big 12.
No, I want to. So they play Colorado State this weekend at home. Should absolutely boat race them. Colorado State sucks. Obviously at Oregon, that's tough. They probably lose that one. At home against USC. The thing I'll say about USC is that offense is one of the best in the nation. That defense is absolutely abysmal. So that one, especially with Colorado being at home, the toss up to me at Arizona State, they should beat those bums. At home against Stanford, should beat those bums. At UCLA, toss-up game. At home against Oregon State. Probably another
Oregon State looks good.
Game. Yeah. At home against Arizona. Arizona is actually kind of a little bit better than people think. Kind of a sneaky team, but they still should win that one.
Mm-hmm.
So they got a pretty tough schedule the rest of the way, but there's, 2 or 3 games that they should win. So if they win this weekend, that's already 5 or 6 wins. And then if they can just win 1 or 2 of those toss-up games, there's 7 or 8 wins for them. So I don't think it's too far-fetched.
I mean, we'll see. It's still way too early. All of a sudden, they could have a major injury and fall off. We don't know.
Also, speaking of Heisman,
yes,
get Shedeur Sanders in that conversation.
Yes,
because that guy's been on a tear.
He's been nuts, man. I'm not one of those OSU fans talking crazy. I know you're not, but I got to troll it up. Colorado's trying to save the Pac-2. A community college would have beat last year.
They said the hell with the Pac-2. They're out of there.
Yep. Colorado State would probably beat Hawaii. You're probably right because Hawaii is freaking terrible. Anyway, next one. I don't know if Tom is still here, but if he is, he's going to be fired up about this one. Notre Dame. Very impressive win on the road against NC State. Now, I know NC State lost a good bit in the offseason. Devin Leary transferred to Kentucky and all that. But this game was close for the first 3 quarters. And then, man, Notre Dame just, took it up to 8th gear in that 4th quarter, scored 21 points. And like we said earlier, Sam Hartman, 4 touchdown passes, man. I know this is kind of like the first decent opponent Notre Dame has played. But Sam Hartman has looked really good, and we saw what this guy did at Wake Forest. He was absolutely phenomenal, putting, Wake Forest on the map pretty much. When Garth, I swear, for most of my life, Wake Forest has been an absolute joke. As soon as Sam Hartman got there, Dave Clawson and all them, they're all of a sudden a very competitive team. He has some good players on this team. I really like Greathouse, I think his name is, the wide receiver. Estime in the backfield as well. Their offensive line is really good. I like Joe Alt. Their defense has looked pretty solid for the most part. They're another team. They have some big games this season, against teams like USC. I believe they play Ohio State again as well. But
I've got a game of theirs circled on my calendar, Noah. And 3 weeks from right now, they will travel to play Duke, which, looking at Duke's schedule, Duke's already at number 21. They play somebody at home this week that's not very good. And then they play at UConn the week after, and then drawing a blank. But basically, they should win their next 2 weeks unless they absolutely fall flat and play terrible.
Yeah,
so they're going to go into that home game with Notre Dame undefeated, top 20 showdown for sure, unless both of these two teams implode in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, Duke plays
I've got that
Northwestern
one circled. That's going to be a good game.
Yeah, Duke should beat Northwestern this week. That's who they're playing. So it should be pretty easy for them. But Garth, what were your thoughts on Notre Dame in this game? Looking very impressive.
Yeah, so I think there was a weather delay to start this game.
Yeah.
I remember right, the weather was an issue early on. I think that's probably what kind of slowed up both of these teams, more so Notre Dame, though, than NC State, because whenever it's wet, it's obviously a lot harder to throw the football and to catch the football. And also coaches don't even like taking that risk a lot of times, and they'll elect to run the football more. But for 3 quarters, it was pretty close. And I was like, all right, is NC State going to take this to the wire and play spoiler? And then all of a sudden Notre Dame turned it on in the 4th and pulled away. So, the final score looks like it was a blowout. It really wasn't. It's just that the 4th quarter, Notre Dame really beat them up at the end. But I'm really liking this Notre Dame offense now. Hartman, obviously, we know what he is. He came over from Wake Forest after a phenomenal career there, picked up right where he left off. He's been really, really good for them so far. Eastamine, really like him. Probably one of the best backs in college football, at least so far this season. Really, really solid offense. I still have some question marks for the defense. Not really. I don't feel like they have huge holes or anything, I guess. But I want to see it go up against an actually good offense and see how they look before I truly judge them.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side of the things, NC State, they've lost a lot the past 2 seasons, really. They had that really, really good year, I think, right before COVID. It was right before COVID, actually, because I think their bowl game got canceled because of COVID. Too many people were sick or something like that. They were supposed to go out to San Diego at Petco Park and play somebody. But really, really good year. Devin Leary actually broke Phillip Rivers' collegiate record there for passing. Then they lost a couple of key guys to the draft last year. I think Leary was injured most of the year, missed some games, just was not a good year. He transfers out. They brought in the guy from Virginia who, obviously we probably didn't expect him to be as good as Leary had been there, but he did do fairly well at Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
But that offense has not been anywhere near what it's been in the past couple of seasons. It's kind of a team that don't really root for, not like a huge fan of or anything, but if they're doing good, it's cool to see. But I think they're probably going to finish towards the bottom of the ACC this year. Not really huge on what they're going to be able to accomplish this year. So, good win by Notre Dame. They turned it on in the 4th, and these next, here in another 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to start to see them play some tougher teams, and we'll be able to really judge just how good or not this Notre Dame football team is.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Brennan Armstrong, NC State's quarterback. He had a really good season for Virginia 2 years ago. He wasn't quite so good last year, so maybe he can get it going. But Notre Dame, like you said, looking good, but they got some big games coming up. They play Ohio State in 9 days. That game could determine their season right there. I mean, plain and simple. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, they played last year. Notre Dame kept it close for a half, and then the second half, Ohio State kind of pulled away. So we'll see if they can do something different this year. Kind of like Texas did something different from what they did last year. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Now, this one, Garth, this is a team that you guys played in week 1. And then what do you know? They struggled against a team that lost to Texas State. Baylor kept this game very close. It was tied at 13 late in the 4th quarter. Blake Shapen did not play this game for Baylor. He was out injured. So Sawyer Robertson came in for Baylor. And, man, I saw this interception he threw. This was one of the worst decisions I've ever seen in my life. He was under pressure. I think it was like a 3rd and 13 or something. So he was trying to make a play, but, he threw it in double coverage. A play that had absolutely no chance of success. Turned it over. And then Utah scores the game-winning touchdown with 17 seconds left. Now, I will say this. Utah almost completely fucked this game up because instead of going down and kicking a game-winning field goal as time expires, the running back went in the end zone and gave the ball back to Baylor. All of a sudden, there's a broken coverage. Baylor had the ball like the 13-yard line. They get a shot at the end zone, and I got to say, Garth, I saw the replay, and I saw a lot of people saying this. I think they got robbed. I think there was defensive pass interference on the play. It wasn't called, so Utah escaped, and they got the close win on the road. But, man, they made that way harder than it had to be. These guys need Cam Rising back fast. They need to get this offense going again. And their defense was overall pretty good. Granted, the Baylor defense, our offense was rather anemic for most of the game. But, struggle win after, mostly looking pretty good against Florida. What were your thoughts on this game from Utah? Since obviously this is a team that you guys, played in week 1 and they looked pretty good, and you were kind of low-key rooting for them to win this game, so it made your guys look a little bit better.
Yeah, it was a really weird game for me because, like you said, I guess a part of me was like, hey, screw Utah, I hope Baylor wins this. But the more logical, like less emotional side of me as a fan was like, hey, you need Utah to win because if they keep winning, that loss to them doesn't look as bad. Whereas if they go on a losing streak, all of a sudden that loss week 1 looks way, way worse. It's really weird. Baylor has been so up and down these past 3 seasons, Noah, under Dave Aranda. Like, they've had some really, really high moments, and they've had some, like, what the hell is going on with this team type moments.
Yeah.
We saw them in the Big 12 title game, actually. So they've been to the Big 12 title. I don't remember. Didn't they lose that in a close one right at the end, if I remember correctly, to Kansas State?
I thought they played Oklahoma State. I'm pretty sure they won because that was the game where Spencer Sanders threw like four interceptions, but they needed a goal line stand at the end. Yeah, they won 21-16 against Oklahoma State.
They did win that one then.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they've won a Big 12 title under him. They had a pretty bad year last year. It doesn't look like they're going to be that great this year. Like, I don't think they're going to be downright terrible or anything, but I don't see them competing for the Big 12. It's such a weird team to me personally. Like, one week you can see them take a really good team right to the wire, and then the next week you see them, just absolutely struggle bus and barely win or lose to a team they should have beat. And then on the other side of things, Utah, like you said, I think they need Cam Rising back badly. I think them probably being at home in Utah, because that is such a tough place to play, and they have a really good record there over the past, 20 years, really. I think that kind of really benefited them, and then having to go on the road, you kind of saw more of the holes in this roster with all the injuries that they've got going on. But yeah, they need Cam Rising back. I think also if they can get Queeth back at tight end,
yes,
that's going to be huge for them. But for them, it's one of those moments where you're just like, I'm glad we got out of there with the win, because, whether people agree with it or not, the realistic expectations for this Utah team, like the players on the team, the locker room, the coaches, the fan base, they expect to compete for another Pac-12 title. They've won it the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. They're probably thinking, hey, we can do it again. We still have a good football team. So it's one of those games that you're glad that you escape and go, all right, guys, we kind of got to get our shit together after that, because that game should not have been that close. We gave them way too many chances to stick around in this one and almost pull it off. So kind of sucks if you're a Baylor fan, sigh of relief if you're a Utah fan.
Garrett says Ohio State's going to clap the cheeks. We'll see about that, man. We'll see. Speaking of struggle wins, Garth, next 2 games we got were definitely the biggest struggle wins of the week, in my opinion. And the first is Oregon. Now, Oregon was down most of this game to Texas Tech, Garth, but they scored 20 points in the fourth quarter to win a tight one against Tech, 38-30. Bo Nix, Garth, my main man, my favorite quarterback, as you know, over 400 yards of total offense, 2 pass touchdowns to lead the Ducks, come from behind win, and a big victory for them. Now, credit to Texas Tech. They kept it close, especially because they lost to Wyoming in week 1 in overtime. That was not the game they wanted. I think they'll feel a little hard done by that they did let this one slip away. But overall, I mean, look, I've criticized Bo Nix a lot in the past when he was at Auburn, but I do have to say he's looked really good while he's at Oregon. He looked really good in this game. Oregon, I think, is a team that can compete for the Pac-12. I want their defense to be a bit better, though, than it has been the past couple of years. As we all know, Oregon's always a team that has these high-flying offenses or whatnot, but I can't remember the last time they've had a very good defense, to be honest with you. So, overall, I think it's an impressive win. I think, definitely a struggle win, but I do think they were on the road, if I remember right. Don't
I
quote me on
believe
that.
this game was there in Lubbock.
So and Lubbock is not, a cupcake place to play by any means. So, impressive win, but I do want to see a little bit more for Oregon. It's still really early in the season, and, they did struggle in this game. Interested to see what they do with the conference schedule. Garth, what were your thoughts on this game for Oregon sneaking it out?
Yeah, so Texas Tech, first and foremost, I think they're a little bit better than a lot of people give them credit for. Like, this was one of my under-the-radar kind of dark horse teams headed into this season because of how they finished last season. Seems like whether it ends up being the right head coach or not long-term, the guy that they got now is a really good kind of locker room present players coach. The guys really rally behind him. And they've had a really good offense, which, just like Oregon, that's kind of been their MO. So I'm not really surprised that they played them tough at home. Honestly, I think it sucks, though, if you're Texas Tech, because it's like, hey, look, if we just made one more play in each one of these games, they very well could be 2-0 instead of starting off 0-2. Like, they've got themselves into a hole that they got to dig themselves back out of now to kind of compete for the Big 12. On the other side, Oregon, like you said, the defense still kind of a major question mark. But Bo Nix has been absolutely phenomenal. I'm still kind of surprised that, like, hey, this is Bo Nix, the same guy that we saw look absolutely horrendous at Auburn out here running around, making all kinds of plays, throwing for 400 yards a game. It's kind of like surreal to me. And, if there's anybody that can kind of get this defense going, I think it would be Dan Lanning, being a defensive-minded coach. We'll have to see, though. It's going to be really, really tough if they can't get not even really great, Noah, just better defensive play when they run up against teams like USC, Utah, Washington, what be it. But, good start for Oregon. At least they're winning. They're keeping themselves right in the mix because this Pac-12 is a dead sprint for whoever's going to make it out alive.
Yeah, a couple more notes before we move on. Number one, Troy Franklin, the receiver for Oregon, over 100 yards and a touchdown. Keep an eye on that guy. I've always liked him. He looks pretty good. And number two, Tyler Show, the quarterback for Texas Tech. He did have almost 400 yards of offense and 4 total touchdowns, but he also threw 3 interceptions. And in a close game in the fourth quarter, that's just not what you can afford, especially, this was an 8-point game at the end of the day. If he can take care of the football a little bit more, I think he's got some talent. But unfortunately, I think those turnovers did cost him at the end of this game. So we'll see what happens for both those teams as the season progresses. Now, the biggest surprise of the week for a team that did win, but my God, they made this as difficult as possible. And when I was watching, I think it was the Ole Miss Tulane game, I was keeping an eye on the score at the bottom of the screen. I'm like, how is this game still close this late in the game? UNC going to overtime against App State. Now, I will say this. App State has a phenomenal record against really good teams. Obviously, everyone remembers when they beat Michigan back in 2007. But, they typically compete very well against, high-caliber opposition, and this was no exception.
I think didn't they actually beat UNC last year, Noah, on, like, the very last play of the game in App State? I know they had a college game day, and the game was definitely in App State. And whoever it was, they beat on the very final.
No, I remember the game you're talking about. I don't think it was North Carolina, though, because that was okay, yeah, I got it up here. North Carolina, that was the first game of the season where they lost 63-61, that crazy-ass game, if you remember that one. The game that they won in the last play, I'm trying to remember what it was. I'm looking at the scores, and it doesn't help that a lot of them are super close.
The other name that's popping in my head is Troy, if that was a really close game score-wise.
Oh, yeah. Hail Mary pass against Troy. Yep, 32-28. That was it. But, yeah, I mean, they compete really well. And Garth, this is another game where Drake May, I got to be honest, really wasn't, lighting it up. I'll get his stats up here real quick, but I think he had a couple of turnovers in this game, if I remember right. No, but he didn't have any turnovers, but he didn't have any touchdowns either. He only had 208 passing yards. But the reason they won this game, Garth, Omarion Hampton, man, at running back, 234 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. He basically saved this game single-handedly. Now, I will say one thing for App State. I don't understand their play calling in overtime. You were running the ball great all game. What did they do in overtime, Garth? They throw 4 straight passes. Like, why do you change up something that's working? Like, they were killing UNC's defense all game with running the football, and then they decided to change it up in overtime. I don't know why they did that. I think that really contributed to them losing this game. Also, the fact they couldn't stop a nosebleed, trying to stop Hampton. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make about UNC, Guard. I really don't. They looked so impressive in week 1 against SC. Now I'm starting to think how much that was UNC being good and how much that was SC just regressing badly, because their offensive line against UNC, I mean, they gave up like 9 sacks. Like, it was something ridiculous. Spencer Rattler had no time to throw. Then they play like a team like App State. Now, credit to App State. Like I said, they do well against good competition rather frequently. But I don't know what to think of this. What were your thoughts from keeping up with this game, Guard?
Yeah, what a weird start to the season for North Carolina, honestly, Noah. They open up with South Carolina, Battle of the Carolinas, college game day. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's hyped up. South Carolina coming into the game, finishing last year really, really strong. Good offseason for them. Good recruiting class. Shane Beamer, everybody's expecting them to kind of compete for that second spot in the East behind Georgia.
Yeah.
And UNC completely dominates them. ACC dominated an SEC team at the line of scrimmage. That's something that we almost never see. And Drake May doesn't really play that well. Fast forward 1 week, Drake May doesn't really play that well. The defense obviously didn't play that well, letting up that many points and that many yards to App State, a team that, don't get me wrong, like you said, App State is like now known for having these huge upsets against good teams. But UNC should have handled them. Drake May does not play good again. Really, really weird start to the year for him. This is a guy who a lot of people probably had, maybe not as the outright Heisman winner, but definitely like a Heisman contender, potential Heisman semifinalist. And he just has not started the year good. I don't know if it's something going on with him, the offensive play calling, maybe the wide receivers aren't what he's used to been having in years past. I know the transfer from Florida State not getting cleared has not helped them at all in that department. Just really, really weird. And then also, too, the other thing, they win the game not by passing, but by rushing, having a really, really solid rushing attack. So just, a complete, out of left field, weird start to the year for UNC. And honestly, they should just be really relieved that they made it out, thanks in large part to the blunder by App State, like you said, electing to throw the ball 4 times instead of trying to at least run on first down and get some yards positive, because they're obviously in contention for the ACC championship this year, whether they win or not, make the title game. That's, what they're expecting to do and want to do, their goals this year. So, yeah, just it's really weird for me, Noah, to see how this UNC team has won in week 1 and week 2, and the fact that Drake May has not really played well, and they're 2-0 despite it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of the thought is he going to keep playing at this level whole season, which I doubt, or once it gets going, what is UNC going to be? Because, honestly, Garth, Clemson losing week 1, I think gives a lot of teams the ACC an opportunity. FSU should be the favorite as of now. UNC, okay, they didn't look good against App State, but they're 2-0, they're still ranked. If they keep winning, they'll be high up there. What can the other teams do as well? I mean, I think I was reading earlier, if Syracuse wins this weekend, it'll be the first time they've started 3-0 in back-to-back seasons since 1959, 1960. Like, that's crazy. So, maybe they could do something. They started 5-0 last year before they went on a little skid. We'll see what happens, but I don't know if Andrew's still here, but if he is, we're going to talk about one of the Pac-2 teams right here real quick. Washington State, man. I was keeping up. I didn't watch this game, but I was keeping up with the score, and I was thinking, man, Wisconsin just could never get ahead in this game. Washington State had this game completely under control, it looked like. I mean, 3 turnovers for Wisconsin. Cougars defense showing out, and Washington State now ranked. I don't know if anyone had that on the docket. I mean, they've been pretty decent the past few years, but Wisconsin, man, Garth, it's tough, right? I do really like Luke Fickell. I think he is, really good hiring for them, but I do think it's going to take some time for him. I still think that because of how weak their division is compared to the other one, they could still potentially make a championship game appearance. But, I mean, overall in this one, Wisconsin just was genuinely unimpressive. Like, I think Mordecai was pretty good. He had 278 yards and touchdown, but the running game was just okay. Malusi averaged 4.1 yards per carry. And the other side, Cam Ward for Washington State, 212 yards, 2 pass touchdowns, but they didn't really do anything on the running game. Excuse me. Overall, I think Washington State's defense was what decided this game. I don't think anyone expected to have Wisconsin have an electric offense by any means. But I mean, in a close game, go 3-0 for the turnover battle, and the game ends. I don't remember the exact score, but it was something like 8 to 10 points. So, it wasn't like a field goal game, but it wasn't out of reach either. So I think Wisconsin definitely screwed themselves over with turnovers in this game. What were your takeaways from this game? Not only, Wisconsin losing, but, Washington State, another team in the Pac-12, and now all of a sudden they're ranked.
Yeah, Washington State kind of trying to show that, hey, look, all the other teams in the Pac-12 are getting all the hype right now, but, like, we're coming to play this year. They've played spoiler a lot in the past too. Mm-hmm. They got that big rivalry with Washington that they've won, here and there over the past 5 or 6 seasons. So this is a team that could, I don't know if they're going to go on and be in the Pac-12 title game, win the Pac-12, anything like that, but I feel like this is a team this season that you can't take lightly, because they could definitely play spoiler and pull a big time upset over somebody, especially if they don't bring their A game. Don't know what to make with Wisconsin this year. No, it's really strange because I feel like the two things that I know Wisconsin football for is having that like really insane running back that even though the team probably isn't that good around him, big time games. Monte Ball is a guy that comes to mind for them.
Melvin Gordon,
exactly. Like they always have this big time running back that just has a fantastic season. And on the opposite side of things, they usually tend to have a really, really good defense. And actually, a lot of times, people don't realize just how good the defense is because the team's win-loss is not good. But usually, they're finishing pretty high up in the nation for total defense. Mm-hmm. So it's strange not to see that this year. But I think that's probably what you're going to see as Luke Fickell's there for an extended amount of time, gets his type of guys in there. I think he's really going to try and make this team good at passing the football. And obviously he wants to keep the defense good too, but it's going to be really interesting to see how they pan out. No, I do think that Fickell is a good hire. Like you said, they're going to have to give him time because unfortunately this is a roster that was kind of depleted year after year after year before they finally fired the old guy there that we know well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the year goes for them. I love Luke Fickell. I think he's going to end up being a good hire. I think they might be in for kind of a rough year this year, though, honestly. And like I said, Washington State could play spoiler. I think they've got a under-the-radar good team this year. And actually, when I was doing my Pac-12 studying for our show, I saw a lot of things where people were kind of like, hey, this could be a dark horse team. And they were very high on their defense. That was one thing I saw mentioned a lot. So I'm not really shocked by them, honestly. But yeah, it's weird for me, Noah, to see Washington State come in and win because of defense and Wisconsin defense be lackluster and have not really too good of a rushing attack.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of the Wisconsin defense guard, I think a big loss for Wisconsin that I don't know if enough people have mentioned is losing Jim Leonard. He was their defense coordinator when they had that dominant defense back in 21. He was even their interim head coach last year after they fired Paul Christ. And now he's gone. He's gone to Illinois. And like you said, I think their defense is taking a step back. I think their running game is pedestrian. Jonathan Taylor, there's another guy we didn't mention, another fantastic Wisconsin running back. But, I mean, we'll see. I do think it's another transition year. I don't think they're in as terrible a position as a team like Nebraska or anything like that. But, the Big Ten, definitely a tough conference. Like I said, their division is favorable, so we'll see what happens with them. How about this Eagles-Vikings game? My son's flag league could broadcast a better first quarter than that. And I've been keeping up with it. I think it was like 3-0 last I checked. There's a missed field goal, something like that. Hurts isn't looking too good, it sounds like.
There's
Go Knowles. There he is. Good old Mike Aldridge in the comments.
He's probably watching this Miami game tonight, being fired up. A lot of trash talking going down between Miami and the Florida State guys from what I've seen on social media.
Dude, okay, I know Miami looked impressive, but FSU, man, number 3 in the nation, destroy LSU. Let's slow it down a little bit, man.
A lot of the things being said, Noah, is that Van Dyke this year is a better quarterback than Jordan Travis has been, and that they are going to beat Florida State when they go there to play.
Look, man, Tyler Van Dyke had a great game. He's also very inconsistent. I want to see him do it multiple weeks in a row. But you know what, Garth? I'm about to fire you up real quick. Miami fans want to talk shit when they're doing buy one, get one free last week. They have $1 seats this week. You can get, $50 50-yard line tickets for like $14. You beat an A&M team that went like 5-7 last year with the number 1 class in the nation. Jimbo Fisher hasn't won a big game in about 5 years other than competing with Alabama and beating them once in a blue moon in a fluke game. And you want to talk shit, man? And it was at home as well. I mean, you know what? Fucking, we'll go ahead and get into it. We had one more game before this one, but since we're already talking about it, why not? Absolutely no defense this game. Like I said, Van Dyke, fantastic in this game. 5 touchdowns, 374 pass yards. I just want to see him do it multiple weeks in a row. That's my only thing with Van Dyke. That's what I think holds him back from being an elite quarterback in college football. If he could do it more consistently, he's got all the talent in the world, Garth. Like, this guy is one of the most talented quarterbacks in college football. But he kind of reminds me of, what we were saying about Quinn Ewers last season after he got injured. He doesn't look like the same guy. He looks more inconsistent. He doesn't, he's not lighting up like we thought he was, earlier in the season. Is Van Dyke going to be a guy that we're talking about, the first 2 weeks? Man, he looks incredible. But then, late October, we're saying, he's struggling again. Miami's not looking too good on offense. And I don't think their defense is very good, Garth. I mean, I didn't even know half of the quarterbacks in A&M's or half of the players in A&M's offense had Connor Weigman at quarterback. And they gave up 33 points. Like, Miami had to, pull away in that second half pretty much, and credit their offense. Their offense was phenomenal. But A&M, man, they just look in complete disarray. Now, I know you hate Miami. I don't particularly like them myself, but what were your, as unbiased as you could be, thoughts on this game?
I actually thought I felt like it was probably going to be a close game because I'm not very high on A&M and Jimbo and what's going to happen there. I feel like that ship is slowly sailing away. And I think the only reason he's really still there is because the buyout is so absolutely absurd because of that contract they gave him. But the fact that, I don't think it's really a lack of talent because he's recruited really well since he's been there. A&M is one of the top programs in the country, even when they're down. So, it's really easy to get money into the program, get the fans to show up. There's a lot of support. It's not like it's a struggle to get people to show out for your team and donate and all that kind of thing. And Jimbo obviously has won in the past. It's not like this is a guy who's been a complete bum his entire coaching career. And it's like, oh yeah, he's just doing the same old thing again. Mm-hmm. So it's really weird to see. The one thing I will say about Texas A&M so far through 2 weeks, Noah, is it does look like their offense is a lot more competent this year. Because in the past 2 seasons after they lost, they had that one really, really good year where they're really salty about CFP and all that and complaining in the media. Ever since that, their offense has sucked outside of the Alabama upset and, moments here and there. But this year through 2 weeks, it's actually been pretty good, even though they didn't get the win down there in Miami. But yeah, I thought it was going to be a close game. I thought Texas A&M was going to edge it out. I don't think Miami's a bad team. I'm just definitely not sold on them. Like you said, Tyler Van Dyke, very, very talented. He's had some really, really good moments. The issue is he hasn't done it consistently. And the defense, they do have some good players. Their safety, I believe it's Cam Kitchens, is actually one of the best safeties in all of college football. But as a whole, that defense is not very, very good. And I think Miami is jumping the gun way, way too early, talking about ACC title, and they're going to go into FSU and beat them. And Van Dyke's going to be quarterback of the year for ACC and in the Heisman talk and this and that. And, like you said, buy one, get one free tickets for the A&M game couldn't sell out, not even close. They had 48,000 people there, and the stadium holds 60 total. Meanwhile, Florida and Georgia are getting like 90,000 people playing absolutely nobody cupcake schools.
Yeah, right.
And then this week, dollar nosebleed tickets, $14 to sit at the 50-yard line on the sideline. That I'm actually jealous because I'm telling you, Noah, I love to go to Gator home games. If I could only pay that much to sit in that good of a seat, I would be the happiest man alive. So I am jealous about Miami for one thing and one thing only, and that's their ticket prices. But yeah, like they pulled away in the second half. It was a very back and forth game, not much defense being played by either side. Miami pulls away late, and now all the Miami fans are just going nuts, talking trash, hyping their team up. So I don't really know their schedule outside of they're playing a cupcake tonight and beating them handedly. So They'll be talking even more now all week long. They'll be after Mike. They love going after him and the FSU fans for some reason. But yeah, hopefully somebody comes along and humbles them is what I'll conclude with there.
Well, Garth, a team I do think could humble them is FSU. FSU looks good. They do.
Sadly, I was looking at the schedule actually because I agree. I think FSU can, especially being at home in Doak. Sadly, they don't play till like the second to last game of the season or right towards the end anyways.
Mike says Miami playing had no idea. Mike, be honest. Like, I know you hate these guys, but you absolutely knew they were playing because they live rent-free in your head. Come on, man. Same thing with Garth. This guy knows when they're playing all the time. How does it feel being 0-3 against us? Jimbo is finished. He is finished, Mike says.
That's Mike's guy right there, Jimbo.
Last time they played, I was 2 years old. Doesn't matter, LOL. All right, 2 more games we got. And these are the games I actually fully watch. So I can kind of comment a bit more on these ones more specifically. This game. Now, I know you were at the Florida game during this one, Gar, so I got a couple thoughts on this one. First of all, this game was not a 37-20 game. If you see that score and you didn't watch the game, you think, oh, Ole Miss won pretty handily. This game was tied at halftime. This game was 27-20 with about, I'd say, 4 or 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Then one shout-out I got to say, a guy that most people wouldn't mention. The Ole Miss kicker hit like a 56-yard field goal when this game was 27-20 with about 2 minutes left. Pretty much put the game out of reach. Then the next drive for Tulane, there was a forced fumble and the quarterback was trying to throw it. It was turned for a touchdown. And then that's how you get 37-20. But overall, it was actually a very close game. A couple of reasons I think Tulane lost this game. Number one, Kai Horton at quarterback. Now, I will say this. I was impressed with him in the first half, but in the second half, we started to see him. First of all, this guy has a great arm, but this guy does not have deep accuracy at all. I saw him 4 or 5 multiple deep balls where it's not even close, where it's like 10 yards away from the receiver. And these are guys that, are fairly open, or sometimes I think he had 1 or 2 that even, you could say, were wide open and just missed them. Number 2, the Tulane defense. I thought they were good in the first half. I think in the second half, they started to get a bit tired because Jackson Dart was starting to, dare I say, dart him up. But yeah, and one thing I do want to say, Garth, no disrespect to these commentators at all, but when they were saying it's such a surprise that Spencer Sanders could not beat out Jackson Dart for the starting quarterback position, what are you guys talking about? This guy was, I don't know why people like this guy. He was not good at Oklahoma State, man. Like, yeah, he's great if you want 3 turnovers in a crucial game or whatnot, but he's talented. I'm not going to say he's not, but I mean, he just had too many big turnovers in key moments. Jackson Dart looked very good. Their receivers, I'm trying to remember his name. I think his name is Harris. One of Ole Miss's receivers had like 5 touchdowns already this season because he had like 4 the first game or whatever. But he looked really good. Let me see. Yeah, Trey Harris, that's his name. He looked really good. Wade looked really good, over 100 yards rushing. And this was a game where Judkins was actually kept in check, Garth, 2.7 yards per carry. But on the other side, Kai Horton, 15-37, 231 yards, touchdown, interception. Tulane's running game was okay. It was nothing special, kind of around 4 yards per carry. But yeah, overall, I think Tulane's defense just kind of tired in the second half. And while Horton was good in the first half, I think in the second half you could kind of see they really missed Michael Pratt. You could see that Horton was a backup in the second half here.
Yeah, so unfortunately I didn't really get to catch any of this one, Noah, because I believe I wasn't physically at the game because it was a night game, but I think I was driving up there and I was asking you and Dr. CFB to keep me updated as much as possible. sounded like the first half was very, very close, like you said, tied at halftime, but Tulane, from what I understand, was, especially in the first quarter, really outplaying them at the line of scrimmage, keeping the run in check, playing good defense, offense,
Really
the
physical.
ball well. Then, towards halftime is when Ole Miss started to kind of pull themselves back into this one. But like you said, I don't think 37-20 is really indicative of how this game was. It was a very evenly matched back and forth game. Quite frankly, if Pratt played, they probably would have won. Because if this guy, Kai Horton, who I don't think's ever started for them, was able to do what he did, imagine what Pratt could have done. I'm really, really high on that guy. He's a stud there at Tulane at quarterback. Hopefully his injury is nothing too major and they can get him back in there and go on a win streak. What sucks for Tulane is this is kind of that one game on their schedule that was like, hey, if we can win this one, it really, really helps our cause long-term for the season for either making CFP if there's a shot there, or at least like a really good bowl game. Obviously, they can still win out and get a good bowl game, but this was like the one that they definitely had to win if they had any shot at CFP, and unfortunately, they lost it. But still, hats off. This is a team that outside of a season here and there, we're not used to seeing do well, unfortunately. And they've had quite a run since last season, and I think they're going to be okay for the rest of the year. Probably win their conference. Honestly, they're that good. But they got the short end of the stick in this one, and it sucks because all three of us were really rooting hard for Tulane. But hopefully they bounce back this week, Noah. They still got a great team. They still got a lot to play for. So time to kind of regroup and get back on the win streak.
I seriously didn't know. Figures they're playing the JB team. Yeah, well, I mean, good old Bethune-Cookman. But all right, moving on to the major game of the week, Garth. This game, I know you weren't able to catch this because you were at the game, but this game was very entertaining. Texas, Alabama. Now, I'll start with my thoughts, Garth, and you can kind of give yours because I was actually able to watch. Quinn Ewers, he's in the best shape of his life. The commentators were saying he lost about 23 pounds compared to last year. He became a Christian, I believe it was, and that really helped his mindset. He looked so cool, calm, collected during this game, Garth. It didn't look like, he was playing on the road in Tuscaloosa, which is obviously not an easy atmosphere at all. But he's just making key pass after key pass. Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell were making good plays. But what really surprised me the most, Texas at the line of scrimmage on both sides. On offensive line, Quinn Ewers could have, he could have went to the microwave, made a bag of popcorn, and come back to make a pass, and he still would have had plenty of time. Like, Alabama's front guard was not a factor in this game at all. And the other side, Jalen Milroe was under constant duress. I made a post on my timeline to where I said, if he wasn't so elusive and fast, where as soon as a guy breaks through, he's instantly scrambling to the right trying to make a play, he would have gotten sacked at least 5 times in the first half. I'm not even joking. In fact, I think saying he would get sacked in 5 times in the first half is being generous. If that guy was a statue back there, he would have got sacked so many times. He might have even gotten injured with some of the hits he probably would have taken. And as for Jalen Milroe, not sure what to think of this guy. I think he has a bazooka arm. Like, this guy is a cannon. Like, he can throw 70 yards, and it looks like he's not even trying. But you can really tell he's an inexperienced quarterback because the 2 interceptions he had in this game, Guard, weren't even contested. They were terrible decisions, easy picks for the Texas defenders. I mean, those Texas defenders, like, they just didn't have to try at all. I mean, they just easily jumped in front of the balls, intercepted them. It was no contest. He did make some big plays in this game, I will say, but overall, look, here's the bottom line, and we've said this multiple times in the past, Guard. You lose the line of scrimmage, you're losing the game 99% of the time. And Alabama didn't just lose the line of scrimmage, they got absolutely dominated the line of scrimmage. It was not even close. Alabama did do a little bit better than Texas against Texas' running game, but they couldn't stop the pass at all. Sanders had over 100 yards receiving. My guy, A.D. Mitchell, former Georgia Bulldog, 2 touchdowns. Worthy had a touchdown as well. He dropped another one as well. So, I mean, even when,
that's
Alabama,
been a big issue for him, actually.
Yeah. Even when Alabama, got some, holds, a lot of it was just due to Texas mistakes. Overall, this game was close, but I was never really at a point where I thought, man, Texas isn't in this game. They got no shot. It was 16-13 Alabama at some point, and then Texas just fought right back, retook the lead, and it was like Alabama imploded. Texas scored 21 points in the fourth quarter. By the time Alabama scored their last touchdown in the game and got 2-point conversion, the game was basically over. So, I mean, Texas. Now, I will say this. I said on a post after the game, Texas should be top 5. And I honestly wasn't sure they would. But I will say this. The poll makers got it right. They should be number 4 because based on resume, this is the second most impressive win any team has had this season. Most impressive being FSU absolutely dismantling LSU. To beat a team like Alabama on the road, guard, who just had another historic recruiting class, is at home. I know they don't have Bryce Young anymore, but this is still no slouch of a team. They're coached by the greatest college football coach of all time. And they won, I wouldn't say convincingly, but they had it in hand. They were never out of the game. They were always, somewhat in control of the game. And then by the end, it was fairly comfortable. So Alabama's not out of it, but they basically have no margin for error now. If they lose another game, they're probably not going to make a 14 playoff because they're probably not going to make the SEC championship. And Texas, man, I picked them to win the Big 12 in our preseason show. I mean, it's still very early. They could choke like they always like to try and do. But for right now, man, Quinn Ewers, he looks like the man. He looks like that guy that we thought he would be last season when he was tearing up Alabama before the injury. He looks in the best shape of his life, best mindset of his life. Credit to Sarkisian as well. I know this is a guy that a lot of people aren't high on. I don't think either of us were either. But, hey, I mean, and he was very aggressive in this game. And when he went for it on 4th downs, it worked pretty much every time. I think they failed one of them. But other than that, they got some big 4th down conversions in this game. So credit to him as well. What were your thoughts in this game, Gar? Texas beating Alabama on the road.
Yeah, so unfortunately I didn't get to watch it live, but I did go back and watch highlights, and I watched a ton of videos.
Mm-hmm.
On YouTube on this, guys like Josh Pate, obviously Paul Finnebum show, JD Pickle, a lot of like the big college football YouTube personas. And honestly, they agreed with a lot of what you just said, Noah. They said that Texas dominated on the line of scrimmage, which is really, really surprising. Usually Alabama is a team that's very good on both sides of the ball, and the line of scrimmage are big reason of why they've been so good under Nick Saban. The other thing that they mentioned a lot was the fact that it just looked like Texas had better players out there. Like they had the more talented, better coached players making big-time plays left and right, and Alabama wasn't really doing much of the same. The other thing that I noticed across social media and on YouTube, people calling in, actually watched a pretty good video where Alabama fans were calling into Paul Finnebum before he started up his show, and they are not happy. They want Jalen Milroe benched ASAP. They're like, come on, this is enough. This is a running back playing quarterback. The dude can't read a defense. He's athletic, big arm, but like outside of that, he's got nothing going that makes him a good quarterback. Give the Notre Dame transfer actually is who they're wanting to get a shot now playing quarterback. And then the one other thing that I really didn't see a lot of people talk about, Josh Pate on the Late Kick show was the guy who kind of really mentioned this one. And after he said it made a lot of sense to me. I don't think that the issue with Alabama is necessarily a talent issue now, because they still have a ton of talent on this roster. They've recruited really, really well. Like you said, a historic class this past year for the freshmen that are there right now. He credits it a lot to the turnover on the staff, the coaching staff, because in years past, Saban has had legendary assistants. I mean, the list is a mile long, but at one point, he had like 5 or 6 guys total now who are all head coaches in college football. Guys like Mario Cristobal, obviously Kirby Smart, Billy Napier. There's a bunch more that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but he's always had really, really good staffs. And, obviously the head coach is the guy who runs the whole show. He's above everybody. But when it comes to getting the whole team dialed in and coached up and doing the right things, it falls heavily on the assistant coaches and the position coaches. And another thing they mentioned is the Bama fans were like, man, we can't blame it on Bill O'Brien no more. He's gone.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where I'm at with this team, Noah. I don't think that they're like completely finished and they're never going to be good again. And Nick Saban's going to get fired or retired. Like I'm not that extreme, but I think a large part of it is the fact that Nick Saban has nowhere near the type of elite, like best in the country type of staffs like he's had in years past where they've been dominant and won titles. So I think this coming off season, if he wants to, win a couple more titles before he hangs it up, better get aggressive and bring in some top tier assistant coaches. And on the other side of things, really high on Texas right now. I'm still not like fully sold into them. It's just with how Texas has been in recent years. No, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, I acknowledge they're good. I think they can do it, but I can't completely buy in until I see them do it. And I'll finish it off by saying that Red River showdown with Oklahoma is looking real interesting right now because Oklahoma has also, obviously they haven't played a team like Alabama, but they have been looking real good so far to start this season.
Good point on the assistant coaches, Garth. I did want to talk about this. Offense coordinator Tommy Rees, former Notre Dame guy. I mean, it's still a little early to judge him. We'll see what he does. I mean, he was pretty good at Notre Dame last year. I don't know if Buckner's the right guy, the Notre Dame transfer, because I do think he struggled last year. Maybe they'll give Ty Simpson a shot. I wouldn't give up on Jalen Milroe after 2 games because, all of a sudden when they beat that cupcake after week 1, everyone's saying, oh, this guy's the man. He has, a cannon arm, whatnot. He has one bad game. And don't get me wrong, it was a bad game. The interceptions were terrible. But there is potential here. Like, this guy isn't a complete scrub. He does have arm strength. If you can just coach him to make better decisions, maybe there's something here. But we'll see what happens to the OC. But the defense coordinator, Garth, I did want to talk about this. Kevin Steele. He was the DC. So, first of all, he was Nick Saban's first DC at Alabama all the way back in the day. And that's one thing that people mentioned when he got him in. But where Steele was the DC at last year, Garth? Miami. The same team that gave up 45 points to Mid-Tennessee State. They gave up 40 points to Clemson, 42 points to Pittsburgh, 45 to Florida State, 45 to Duke. Tennessee. Lost to Middle Tennessee where they gave up 45 points. Like, this wasn't a guy like a Brett Venables, right? Going to Oklahoma, who, man, he had a great defense last year. He did so good. Man, Jim Leonard, he had a great defense in Wisconsin. He could get a head coaching job. This was a guy last year that stunk it up at Miami. Defense was not good. Now he goes to Alabama. And look, I know Pete Golding, their former DC, was not good. I heard a lot of Alabama fans saying how terrible he was. But I don't know if Kevin Steele's the right guy either. So
it kind of feels, honestly, to me, like Saban's kind of just hiring his old buddies and old pals versus maybe who's actually the best possible hire he could make. Because Bill O'Brien, that's another guy who stunk it up there as OC, and that was another one of his former assistants and a guy he goes, has a long history with. Like you said, Steele is another one. It's another type of those same kind of guy, friend. And I know all too well with Dan Mullen in third and Grantham. Football at the end of the day is a very, very competitive sport where you need the best possible people around you. Especially in the SEC, you cannot choose to just hire guys that you're good friends with on and off of the field just for that sake and neglect the fact that, like, hey, this guy isn't working out. He probably is not the best fit for this, and I'm probably hiring him more so because I've got bias towards him and we're familiar, and it's like an easy person to work with because we've done it before. But like I said, I think this offseason – it might not happen, but what needs to be done is Saban needs to be really aggressive with his assistant coaching hires if they do elect to kind of clean house and bring in a new cast of guys.
We'll see what happens, man. And look, I know Mike said Bama is finished. I don't think they're finished. I hope they are. But, I mean, like I said, they basically have no margin of error. If they lose one more game, 2 losses, they're probably not going to be able to make the SEC championship game, barring some miracle. And even if they do, 2 losses is going to be tough to make into a 14 playoff. It wouldn't be tough in a 12-team playoff, which we get next year. But we'll see what happens with them, man. I'm never going to count them out while the GOAT is there. But, they really did not look good at all. Now, that's going to do it for reviewing games. We're going to get into some predictions. Now, I decided to add this for all our future predictions. We are not professional bettors. Betting is not legal in our states. We do the over-under, the covering for fun. If you're looking to us for betting advice, you're probably going to lose money. I mean, that's just the way it's going to go. Now, we did okay our first week. I'll put up our predictions real quick. So let me put this up as well. So I went 4-4 this week just on outright picks. I got 13 points overall to get up to 15. Overall, I went 4-4 and outright, like I said. I did okay on the covering. Where I really struggled was the over-unders. I got half the over-unders wrong, whereas you, Garth, so even though you went 3-5 outright, you still got 14 points and slightly beat me this week. We're tied on points at 15 because even though your outright picks are bad, your covering was really bad as well. You only got 3 of those right. You got literally every over-under right. I didn't even notice this when I was grading these, and I looked over after. I'm like, how the hell does Garth have more points than me? And I looked at the right column. I'm like, he got literally every fucking over-under correct. Are you serious? But he did. I triple checked to make sure he got everyone correct, which is just absolutely crazy. There were a lot of them were close as well. The Iowa one was close. The Colorado one was pretty close. There was
I think the Notre Dame NC State one was only off by a few points.
Yeah, but I mean, you got all the ones we disagreed on. So, any takeaways from our predictions here, Garth, before we move on?
Yeah, kind of a complete big like question mark, like how the hell did this happen? But I'm glad it did moment for me, because honestly, usually I'm pretty good at picking just the outright winners. That's kind of my strength. Over and unders, not being a better by any means or really ever paying attention to them so much. Kind of shocked I did that well. Definitely did not expect that, which means probably this week, every single one of them will be wrong for me.
Maybe. We'll see what happens. So before we get into our picks once again, a quick reminder of the scoring. 3 points possible for each game. You get 1 point if you pick the correct favorite, 1 point if you correctly predict whether the team will cover or not, 2 points if you pick the underdog and they correctly win. And then if you get the over-under, you get 1 point as well. So we get right in the predictions. We're going to do rapid fire. We got 9 games to predict. First one, we got LSU at Mississippi State. LSU, the 9.5-point favorite, over under a 54.5. Garth, LSU has absolutely owned Mississippi State since the 21st century began, 20-3 against them. Now, I know LSU lost their first game against FSU, and then they beat up on Grambling. But Mississippi State is good, Garth. Will Rogers is one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC. This is a guy that can absolutely throw the ball all over the yard. And Jaden Daniels on the other side, we know is no scrub as well. So what are you thinking about this matchup?
Yeah, so to me, this is 2 teams that have really, really good quarterbacks. Like you said, Will Rogers kind of under the radar, one of the best passing quarterbacks in all of college football. Mississippi State's got a really good offense, not sold on their defense at all. LSU, I think we could argue, is probably a slightly better defense, not sold on their defense either. And Jaden Daniels, another guy who is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. So I do like LSU winning.
9.5 is a big spread.
It is. So I'm going to go LSU winning. I'm going to go with the over because I think this is definitely like an offensive shootout style of game. And if they just both score right around 30, that's going to be, already over that over. So I definitely see it going over. The spread is the tricky part for me, honestly. I feel like if LSU wins this game, it's probably by a touchdown. So I don't think they cover that spread. I think it'll be like a touchdown game, and it's going to be high scoring, like I said.
Okay, so you have Mississippi State covering the 9.5. You think interesting. Okay, this is a tough one. I'll start with the easiest part. I think the over-under, I think it'll go over because I was not impressed with LSU's defense against FSU. Mississippi State gave up 24 points to mediocre Arizona team last week, which you mentioned earlier. So I definitely think it can go above 54.5. I think that's the easy part. I am going to go LSU to win. I think it'll be very close, but I do think they'll win. And I also agree that they'll cover. So, I think it's probably, like you said, a touchdown type of game, maybe a 31-28 or 31-24, kind of around there, something like that, maybe a 34-27. But overall, Jaden Daniels is due for a really good game. He kind of, he had hit and miss moments in the FSU game. I think this could potentially become a shootout type of game. Jacob says LSU covers. It's close. I think it's kind of in that 7 to 10 point range. It's a 9.5 spread. So we'll see what happens. But moving on to the next one, we got Kansas State at Missouri. Kansas State is a 3.5 favorite, over under 47.5. Both of these teams did play last season. Kansas State boat raced them, winning 40-12. Will Howard is a new quarterback this season for Kansas State. So Adrian Martinez was the guy that kind of steamrolled him last year. I'll go first in this one. I have Kansas State winning this game. I do think it could be relatively close, but I don't think Missouri is very good this year. I think they're okay, but Kansas State looks really good. I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen from them. I do not think Missouri will cover the 3.5. I think Kansas State will but win by more than the field goal. And over under, I'm going to say under. I think it's kind of like a 24-17 game. I don't know what to think about Missouri's offense. I really don't. I think Kansas State could do okay. I think 47.5 is a little high, so I'll go the under on that one.
Yeah, so unfortunately, this is going to be a dead even slate because I feel exactly the same.
Oh, there you go.
I've got Kansas State winning because I think they're a really good team. They've really impressed me so far. 2, I'm not high on Missouri at all. I will say one thing about Missouri. It seems like they always tend to have their best games at home. They tend to play really, really tough at home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm going to take the under because I think both of these defenses are going to play pretty well. Missouri's going to kind of hang around in this game. Their defense is going to play well at home. But I do have Kansas State winning by, I would say probably by 7 to 10 points in this one. Probably get like that late score to kind of seal it away in the fourth quarter. So I think they cover. Kansas State wins. Kansas State covers, taking the under.
So what you have – okay, so the way we do the covering is based on losers. So do you have Missouri covering?
No, I don't think Missouri covers. I think Kansas State will win by a touchdown.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, I'm with you there. All right, next one. We got where is it? Minnesota at UNC. UNC has 7.5 here. Over under 50.5. Like we said earlier, UNC did survive last week. Minnesota, tough to make a gauge on them because, they beat Nebraska, and Nebraska's kind of been a tailspin right now. Like I said, I think this game will be decided by, and UNC season will be decided by, when is Drake May going to get it going? Because we know they got that running game. I don't know what to make of their defense. They looked really good against SC, and then they kind of get, steamrolled by App State. But overall in this one, Garth, I'm going to pick UNC to win the game. 7.5, I'm going to say Minnesota will not cover. I think UNC wins by 10, around there. Over, under, I'm going to go over. I'm still not sold on UNC's defense, and I think their offense is pretty good, so I think he can get above 50.5.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me, Noah, because I still don't fully know what to make of UNC, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Minnesota, I think, has a pretty solid defense. Their offense is abysmal. It's at North Carolina. So I think that even though that defense is really good, they're probably in for a long day. So I've got UNC winning. What was the spread again, Noah?
7.5.
7.5. I feel like UNC wins by 10, so I don't have Minnesota covering. The over-under is where it's really tricky for me because I could see UNC scoring a lot in this game, ended up with like 35 points. The issue is if Minnesota only scores 2 touchdowns, 35 and 14 is only 49. I'm going to go with the under. I think UNC will put some points up. I do not feel confident in Minnesota scoring in this one, though.
All right, well, that's the first variation we've had. I was kind of worrying we were going to pick the exact same things for our picks there. Jacob says UNC by 10 plus. I agree. Obviously, we could be wrong, but we'll see what happens. Next one. This is a game that doesn't have a very close spread, but I included it solely because it involves number one team in the nation playing their first conference game. South Carolina going on the road to face Georgia. Massive spread, obviously. Georgia, a 27.5 point favorite, over under 54.5. UGA getting into this game with a 19-game winning streak versus SC team, which, like we said, their O-line really struggled against UNC. I'll let you go first in this one, Guard.
This one's an absolute crapshoot for me, Noah. Obviously, I have Georgia winning. The issue for me is the spread because, one, whenever it's this big, it's really, really hard to judge. And the other thing, too, is I have no idea what to make of SC. Like, this is a team headed into the season I thought was going to be really good, really competitive, not go out and win the SEC East or anything, but compete for that second spot. Mm-hmm. And then they go out and do kind of everything to make me question everything I thought about them. I don't think it's good that they've had really bad offensive line issues, especially going up against the front seven like Georgia's. And their offense hasn't looked as good as what we thought it was going to be, especially with how well it played to end last year. I think they're still kind of trying to figure things out, settle into the season. Over under 54.5. I could see Georgia scoring anywhere from 30 to 40 alone in this one. Man, this is a tough one for me. The only thing that's easy about this one to me is picking Georgia to win. I think I'll go with the over just because I think Georgia's going to score a lot. So as long as SC just has like a couple of touchdowns, 17 points, it should go over.
Mm-hmm. What about the spread? 27.5 for UGA.
That's tough. I'm going to go with my gut on this one, Noah. I honestly have no idea for sure, but I'm going to trust my gut. Trying to do this thing this year where I go with my gut because it tends to be right instead of picking against it. I think that South Carolina will cover. I think it'll be really close, but I think they'll just keep it, to where they cover.
And it looks like Jacob agrees with you. He says UGA by 21-24. So I'm going to pick UGA to win. I think the spread is, like you said, it's tough because it's so high. But realistically, like Jacob said, UGA could win by 21-24, which is very convincing, but still wouldn't cover the spread. So overall,
another thing, Noah, not to interrupt you, sorry, but another thing that makes this really tough is if Georgia gets up early, they're going to pull their starters. They're not going to be playing their starters the whole game, and that is like a whole nother thing to factor in here.
If not, they win by 50 or something. Yeah, I mean, now I will say this, Garth. The first 2 weeks of the season, UGA, especially in the offensive line, did start slow. The first half against I don't even remember the friggin' team they played week 1 at this point. Tennessee Martin. Their offensive line did not look good, especially in the first quarter. They were terrible. Last week they had a bad first quarter, but after that they really started to get it going, and overall they won both of those games convincingly against cupcake teams. So I will say South Carolina will cover because I think UGA might get off to a slow start, but I do think UGA will pull away in the second half. Over under I think is tough because, like you said, if UGA does get up big, they could pull their starters. I don't know what to think about South Carolina's offense, Garth, because I do really like Rattler. But, man, if their offensive line plays like they did against UNC, against UGA, he could get sacked 8 or 9 times. I'm not even kidding. So, honestly, it's a tough one, but I'm probably going to go with the under. Maybe, you could have a 38-14 game, and that's still under. So I think maybe it'll be something like that. We'll see what happens. All I care about, Garth, is winning the game. That's all you need to, worry about making the college football playoffs. Resume and how convincing you win games is nice, but overall, getting the W's on the record sheet is what's most important. So we'll see what happens in that game. Next one. I'm definitely letting you go first on this one. Number 11, Tennessee, going to the swamp after Tennessee struggled against Austin Peay for 3.5 quarters. Everyone's talking about Joe Milton winning the Heisman. He's going to have 50 touchdown passes. their defense sucks. Like, I'm sorry, their defense is so bad. But anyway, Tennessee, 6.5-point favorite. 58.5 is the under. Tennessee did win the game last year, 38-33, but that was in Neyland, and they had both teams had different quarterbacks. So, Garth, home game at the Swamp. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, so all week the talk has mostly been about Tennessee, how good their run game is this year. Their defense has improved. Joe Milton, this and that. Josh Heupel's system is great. They're taking kind of like the next step forward. This is going to be a statement win for them. This is really going to propel them, blah, 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 blah. Like the national media is so like bought in, so hyped about Tennessee. They have like no question marks at all. One thing I'll say, this is a huge rivalry game, even though both of these teams outside of those first couple of years with Mullen have not really been that good lately. But the rivalry is still heated. These two teams hate each other. There's a lot of like big time historic moments in this series. But the games outside of a rare exception are always close. Like it feels like they always come right down to the wire. Every once in a while you have a blowout, but 9 times out of 10, it's a game that goes right down to the wire. A lot of times with some like crazy ass last minute play, like the Felipe Franks Hail Mary. Another time we beat them on literally as time expired, where we just threw like a random out route, had a really good block, and Andre Caldwell just outran the whole entire defense to score like a 60-yard touchdown. If it were in Neyland, I would probably pick Tennessee, just being as unbiased as possible. But because Florida is at home, it's going to be a sold-out crowd. And like I said, I think people are a little bit too high on Tennessee right now. No, I think their run defense is actually pretty solid, at least what we've seen so far this season. It's really hard to know for sure because of, who they've played. Their secondary is a major question mark, has not looked good at all. Austin Peay killed them. They're a run-first team offensively, which actually Florida's strength is also run defense, in my opinion. And Joe Milton has not really looked like what everybody's hyped him up to be, this guy that's just like throwing it all over the field, having these huge deep bombs. Like they wanted him so badly to be Hendon Hooker, and he has not been that so far. So I think Florida pulls this one off in a really close one at home. I think the spread is slightly too high because I think this is going to be something like a 3 to 5 point game. At the end of it, over under of 58. It's like right there. Like my score prediction for this is something like 31-28, right in that ballpark. I'm going to lean with the under because this is, a lot of people like to think Heupel, passing offense, Hendon Hooker last year with Hyatt, all those deep shots. Tennessee is a run-first team this season. We're a run-first team this season. I'm going to go with the under on this one, Noah. So Florida winning. I don't like the spread. I think it'll be 3 or 5 points and the under.
All right. Hope you enjoyed this, Garth. I am picking Florida to win this game. I don't like Tennessee's defense at all. I think their pass defense can be exposed. I think Graham Mertz is actually pretty good most of the time. I don't think he had any help in the Utah game. And look, NC State, it's hard to pick anything from that game. So under. It's tough because I'm not sure what to think of Florida's defense. I do think Armstrong's done a good job. I think for the most part they looked good against Utah. They gave up some big plays here and there. But overall, I think they look pretty good. And then playing NC State, I mean, it's tough to pick anything from that game. I do think Florida can expose Tennessee's defense, so it might be around there, but I think 58.5 is a little high. I'm going to go with the under. And as for covering, 6.5, I think it's kind of on the margin. I do think this is kind of one possession game. I'll say Tennessee will cover, but I'm not too confident about it. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, we got a couple games left, so we'll go ahead and do those real quick. Pittsburgh at West Virginia, the Backyard Brawl. Brandon Kring's Mountaineers going up against the poor Pittsburgh Panthers, who lost to Emory Jones's Cincinnati last week. Unfortunate for them. But West Virginia, 2.5-point favorites, which honestly stunned me. I thought they would be the underdogs.
Yeah.
47.5 over-under. I'll just make this one quick, Garth. No disrespect to West Virginia. I don't think they're a very good team this year. So even, I hope Pittsburgh doesn't screw me again because I picked them. We both picked them last week and they did not show up at all. As for the spread, 2.5, I mean, it could just be a field goal game. So I'm going to say West Virginia will not cover. And 47.5 over under. I'll go with the under. I was not impressed with what I saw from Pittsburgh's offense against Cincinnati. And obviously, I don't have any faith in West Virginia's offense. So I'll say the under on that one.
We almost agreed on this one as well, Noah. I'm going with Pittsburgh to win. I'm not taking West Virginia to cover because, like you said, that's only 2.5. Literally a field goal, and they don't cover. Over-under is one where we disagree. I'm going to go with the over just because I don't think either one of these teams have a good defense at all. So I think it'll be more of kind of an offensive shootout type of game where both teams are driving up and down the field and either kicking field goals or scoring touchdowns. So, yeah, Pittsburgh winning at West Virginia. I just, like you said, no, I don't think West Virginia has a very good team this year. No disrespect to them. It's just calling it like I see it. Do not like West Virginia to cover because of that low spread and going with the over.
All right, next one. We got Syracuse at Purdue. Syracuse is a 2.5-point favorite, over under 57.5. Like I said, if Syracuse it should say looking. If they win this game, they'll have back-to-back 3-0 starts to seasons since 1959-1960. Purdue did look good last week against Virginia Tech. I believe it was on the road as well. Don't know what to make of this game, Garth. I think this is total crapshoot. Just to be different, because I picked against Purdue last week. It did not work for me. I'm going to predict Purdue this week to win this game. Win outright. Don't even worry about the spread. As for the over-under, 57.5. I'm going to go with the under. I think that's a little bit high. I don't see it, getting to both teams around 30 points. I think it'll be a little bit below that.
Yeah, this one is really tough for me. No, I think on paper, Syracuse is a slightly better team. The only thing with me is Purdue's kind of like App State, where they're that team that's always like once a year, never fails. They're going to have that big time upset. I think, man, it's tough. I think I'm going to go with Syracuse to win. Another really low spread. I hate these 2.5-point spreads. I don't think Purdue covers because it's too low. Just like the last game, literally a field goal and it doesn't cover. And then the under, I'm going to go with the under because I think this one is kind of a more low-scoring affair. I do really like Garrett Schrader at quarterback for Syracuse. He's played really, really well both last year and so far this year. But I'm not putting a lot of stock in either one of these offenses being elite or really, really good by any means. So yeah, I'll go with the under as well on that one.
All right. So you got Syracuse, Purdue not covering, and the under. Ben Gamble says roll tide roll.
No.
Sorry about that game last weekend, Ben.
In the words of the late, great Nick D, it is a bad time to be an Alabama fan.
God damn it, Nick. All right. BYU at Arkansas. Arkansas is 8.5-point favorite, over under 47.5. Funny stat for you, Garth. Arkansas is not ranked, but they did have the second most votes of a team outside of the top 25. As for this one, no disrespect to BYU. Very, 2-0 start the season is nothing to scoff at. But I think Arkansas is a really good team this year. KJ Jefferson at quarterback, Sanders in the backfield, Sam Pittman as head coach. Offensive line is strong. Defense is, all right. I don't think it's anything special, but it's not terrible. I will pick Arkansas to win this game. I do think that, or I do not, excuse me, I do not think BYU will cover. I think Arkansas could win by around 10 to 14. I think this is an over game. I think 47.5 is too low. I think Arkansas's offense can be very explosive when they get it going, especially on the running game. So I will go the over on that one.
Okay, this is another one where we, by no means necessary, no pre-planning, are going to have to agree on because I like Arizona at home. I think that, like you said, KJ Jefferson, really, really good, experienced quarterback. Sanders in the backfield, that's a really dynamic, good 1-2 punch. They've got some really good offensive line play, solid tight end, solid wide receivers. They're at home. I just think they're too physical up front for a team like BYU to really be able to match up well with. So I've got Arkansas winning at home. I could see them winning by 10-14. So I don't think BYU covers. And then I'm going with the over as well because, like you said, 47.5 is low.
So we agree completely on that one. Last game of the show before we kind of wrap it up here for the night. TCU at Houston. Both teams are 1-1. TCU is the 7.5-point favorite. Over under of 63.5. First Big 12 opener for Houston guards since they moved from the American Conference last season. But they did lose in double overtime to Rice last week. So, they get that solid win against UTSA week 1. They look like they're flying high. And then you lose to the lowly Rice Owls. But I will say, JT Daniels at quarterback.
JT Daniels, yep, he played really well as well.
There you go. So I think this game is a close matchup. Not sure what to think of TCU. Was their performance against Colorado just TCU being bad? They lost so much, or was it Colorado actually looking pretty good? On their side for Houston, coming off a weak loss, but I definitely think they're a solid team. So I think the 7.5 is maybe a little high. I think this is going to be a very close game, maybe a game decided by a field goal. I'm just going to go for it, Garth. I'm going to pick Houston and win this game. They're at home. They're motivated to win this game after, a disappointing loss last week. TCU did lose a good bit, especially on offense from last season. Lost their quarterback, lost both their top running backs, lost their best wide receiver. So, they're kind of going to have to rebuild a bit. As for the over-under, 63.5 is very high. I think I'm going to go over, I'm going to go under in this one. I mean, it could be 38-20 and it's still an under type of game, so I'll go with that.
Okay, so finally one that we're going to disagree on quite a bit. I'm going with TCU on the road. I do think they lost a lot. They're definitely not the team they were last year. But on the other side of things, I do think Colorado is a pretty solid team. And I think TCU still has a lot of talent on this roster, a lot of playmakers. So I like them to win on the road. 7.5 is tough because I see it being right in that 7 to 10 range. I think I'm going to trust my gut and go with Houston just barely misses covering and they lose by like 10-14. Over, under, I'm going to go with over because I think both of these teams are very aggressive play calling offensively. Defense is not that great. So I'll go with the over, even though it is high. But I really like the fact that this one's going to be an offensive shootout.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our picks. We'll see if we do a little bit better than week 1. We weren't terrible week 1. It was just kind of, an average week pretty much. Ben says Houston has a chance to win this one by 6. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I do think Houston has a chance to win. It's so close. Like, I do think it's a toss-up game. I understand why you picked TCU guard, definitely. But, Houston at home, I mean, you never know. I do think it's a close game, and TCU did lose a lot. So we'll see what happens. But, yeah, that should be the last game we had. And once again, real quick before we do sign off for the night, we're not bettors. So, we do this for fun. Do not take our bets too seriously. Don't think, oh, my God, these guys have no fucking idea. Of course, we have no idea because it's not even legal in our damn states. Okay? So there you go. But anyway, pretty good show tonight. Decent interaction. I know Thursday Night Football was on, so some people are watching that. But, yeah, midseason when people, are complaining about, oh, my God, Thursday Night Football is so shit. I hate all these teams playing. That's what always happens. So that's why we do Thursday sometimes. But remember, guys, Friday is our preferred time slot. We do Thursdays because it lines up better with our scheduling. So that's why we're doing Thursday. During a Thursday Night Football game, it's not ideal. Thank you very much, Ben, for enjoying the show. Appreciate the comments.
Tonight.
My condolences to you after the Texas game. But, Garth, do you have any thoughts here before we wrap it up for the night?
Just a huge shout out to everybody that tuned in. We appreciate you guys week in, week out. You guys always make the show. Love seeing your comments, your thoughts, maybe making us discuss a topic that we didn't even plan on discussing. And just really excited. We got a lot of good games this weekend. We've got a lot of good games coming up over the course of the next few weeks. And other than that, Noah, let's just hope and pray that Florida takes down those dirty, dirty Tennessee Volunteers and kind of sends them packing back up there to Tennessee with a slice of humble pie.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so too, because God, I hate these guys. Like, okay, I don't like Florida, but I kind of respect Florida. Tennessee, man. I just lived around so many Tennessee fans, man, that they're the biggest assholes. Like, they think their shit doesn't they talk like they've won 15 straight national titles, man. But yeah, I hope you guys win. Don't get used to that. That's probably the only time this year I'm going to say that. I hope you lose all your other games and go 2-10. But we'll see what happens this weekend. It's always tough in the swamp. Napier does have a good record there. It's on the road where the Florida has kind of struggled under him. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, good show. Decent interaction for happening during Thursday Night Football. Friday shows obviously do better for obvious reasons. So if we can, we'll do next Friday, which would be the 22nd, I believe it is. Discussing, reviewing week 3, predicting week 4. But until then, from myself, Noah Dogdiber, my co-host and good buddy, Guard Charger Patrick, this has been another episode of the Sweet Tea Show here on the Sports Box. Until we see you next time, enjoy your sports, stay safe, and have a good one.
Thank you for watching this episode of Sweet Tea on the Sports Box. Please remember to follow us on all of our social media outlets. On Facebook at Sportsbox Show, Twitter at Sportsbox Show, Instagram at The Sportsbox Show. Find us on YouTube and join Outside the Box, our Facebook sports discussion group. The Sports Box is brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports in Hamilton. Showcase Sports for the elite athlete. And also our friends over at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use promo code THEBOX at sign up for 10 free points. Thank you for joining us.